Before we use filter, we're going to set up a query that we are then going to apply filter to. But here, the query we're going to set up is something that calculates the number of open orders in each period, and periods here are different years, and also calculates the number of open order lines per year. And we're going to also include a field called year. But for each year, I'm going to be counting the number of open orders and number of open order line items. To determine if an order is open, what I'm going to use is something called the invoice ID inside the order headers table. So let's take a look at the ERD diagram. If we look at the sales order header table here, I have an invoice ID down here, and I have an invoice ID in the sales order header table if I have invoiced the customer, and I only invoice the customer if I have shipped the items. So if this invoice ID is missing, that means that I have not yet shipped the items. It actually could potentially mean that I have actually shipped it, but I have not yet invoiced. But we're going to make a simplifying assumption here of saying that if it's missing, I haven't shipped it yet. So I have not fulfilled the order yet. And I also need to figure out how many line items are open. So I need to somehow get a count of the number of line items, plus I need to get a count of how many headers I have. So when I join these two, each header is going to be repeated many times. So I need to end up counting the number of unique order IDs, and then I can just simply count the number of line items in general to get the number of line items that are open. But I of course need to join these together and then have a where clause that says that I include only orders where the invoice ID is null. All right, so let's get started. So I'm going to do select. I'm going to say from, and we know we're pulling from the sales order header table. I'm going to call that A, and we're going to join that, with the sales order line table, and I'm going to call that B, and then we're going to join that on A order ID equals B order ID, and I'm going to be selecting the order date, and we'll work more on this in just a little bit up here on the select side. But then we did say we're going to have a where statement where A invoice ID is null, and we were going to be grouping by that order date after we have somehow obtained the year out of it. But let's look at this first. I'm going to go ahead and run this. Actually, I'm going to include order ID here too for now. So let's go ahead and run that without the where. Okay, order ID is ambiguous. Sorry about that. I need to specify that, and I'm going to specify that too, even though I don't need to. So if we run it now, we're going to see that we have a bunch of order IDs, and I need to add the invoice ID here, otherwise we don't see what I meant for us to see. So let's go ahead and run that. So what we're seeing here is all our orders, or actually this is at the line item level because we joined them. So, but notice here we have all these invoice IDs, and we have order ID 4 repeated 3 times because we have 3 line items for order ID 1. And we have this invoice ID here listed, meaning we have invoiced this order and it has been fulfilled. But in here, there's a bunch of rows that have null values in them. So let's go ahead and filter for when it is null, which then indicates that we have not yet fulfilled that order. And when we run that query, we now see that we have a bunch of null values in the invoice ID column, and we now have only 9,628 rows. We have a lot more before. I mean, there's still quite a few open in open orders, but now we have all our open orders, which was one of the goals in this. Okay, so this will give us all the open orders, and then let's see, what is it that we need to do? We need to have a column called year. So I'm going to do as year, and to get the year out, of course, we need to do an extract. So we're going to do extract, and then we're going to say year from order date. So it's set for each year, so we're going to go ahead and add a group by, and I'm going to group by year. It says order ID must appear in the group by clause. So yeah, when I'm grouping by year, it doesn't make any sense to have order ID in there anymore, but we are going to be counting order IDs. And this is not quite right, but I'm going to keep it like this for now. And I'm going to remove invoice ID as well, because we're not going to use that anymore. It's in the where clause. All right, so let's go ahead and run this and see if it works. So now we're getting a count here of year and then a count of open orders. However, notice here that we're actually ending up counting how many line items we have because we have joined these two tables. So remember that I had order IDs repeating many times. So I actually want to count each unique order ID So to do that, I need to add the word distinct in here. And now if I run this, I'm getting fewer there. However, the other number I just saw, that was actually how many line items I have outstanding. So every single row in this result set is a line item that is outstanding. So if I simply count how many rows I have here, and I'm going to do count 1. I don't like counting order ID here because I feel like I'm counting a bunch of duplicates. I could do that. I will return the same result because I have values in all of them. And all the count is doing is counting how many values I have in that column that's being counted. But I feel like I want to show that I'm actually counting the number of rows in a more explicit way. So I'm going to do count 1. Another way of maybe doing that would be to say, okay, I'm going to count a combination of order IDs and stock item IDs. And I could do that by doing some sort of concatenation between the two. And to concatenate things, you just do 2 bars. You need to cast it to text before you do that because you can't concatenate 2 numbers, and order ID and stock item ID are numbers. But anyway, this count 1 will achieve what I'm trying to do. So let's see, what are we going to call these? We're going to call one of them number of open order line item, and then the other one we're going to call number of open orders. And then let's go ahead and do some indentation. And then let's go ahead and run this. So what I'm now showing is that in year 2014, I have 1 open order still from that year. And there's 1 line item for that open order. In year 2015, I have 2 open orders with a total of 2 line items. In 2016, I have 3,082 open orders and a total of 9,625 open line items.